This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Weapons of Class 4 and lower...
Hello and welcome to 365 Reels. My name's Eric Ortiz, Full American New York City. My cohort is...
Everett Goldner. I'm a writer. Hey, what's up?
So, we're going to change things up a little bit this week. We're going to talk about the Purge series.
Purge series. 3 movies so far. Probably more coming.
Yeah, franchise that I really have enjoyed pretty much all of the movies for different reasons. Everett's a big fan of the first two, not so much the third. But let's start with the first movie and just get into why we enjoyed it. And I actually got you into this franchise because I dragged him into the theater to see the third film.
To see Election Year.
Election Year, yeah.
I went in not knowing what to expect, and I left not really knowing what I'd seen or what it meant because Election Year made so little of an impact on me. And as I think it did on a lot of people, it came and went, not much box office, kind of blah reviews.
Oh no, it made money.
It made money?
Well, it made money.
Everything makes money overseas. It's not really the point.
It made money in the States. It was America, damn it.
But because I hadn't seen any of the first two before seeing this one, I didn't have any expectations. So I thought the first one, and it was okay. This is kind of a nice disposable action movie. Basically, a very whatever feeling about it. Then I went back and watched the first one, prepping for this, and to my surprise, the first one is a really, really tight suspense film, locked gates, community. There's a bit of class warfare in there. Everything is... Yeah. It's very... The first movie has a very controlled vibe, both in terms of the way it's shot, the way it lets you into the world bit by bit, introducing the idea of the Purge, you know, what it is, what it means, which is a really, really rich idea. You don't have to go any further than YouTube to see how many people watching the Purge trailers and saying, "Man, if only."
Yeah, I've heard that. Like, if people actually want this thing to be a real thing, and I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?" It's like Hunger Games, you know, meets the Suburbia. It's pretty much what the first Purge movie pretty much sets up.
Right. I mean, it's all dystopia, but it's got hooks. The idea hooks into you. You can see what it would be like if this would happen. And the first one, even, it doesn't get too far into it, but the first one even gives you a bit of philosophy where Ethan Hawke's daughter is asking her parents, "So do you feel the need to purge?" And they tell her, "No, not exactly, but if we did, then we would." A bit of moral relativism, which I really enjoyed, even though it only lasts 5-10 minutes before we get into the suspense. Yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things about even that conversation, the dinner scene before the purge actually begins, is how here you have this family that doesn't purge. They pretty much bunker down for the duration of the event, while everybody around them is sharpening knives or, you know, getting out the old shotgun or whatever, and they accept the good the purge does. And they also have that inkling of like, well, you know, if we ever wanted to do it, it's there.
Yeah.
And I think that almost gives them the excuse of just accepting the horrible things that happen to people.
Yeah, it's really easy to dig into the psychology of the characters in the first movie because they've got something invested in the system. Ethan Hawke's character designs
security systems.
For Purge night, naturally, on the night of the Purge, one of them goes awry, leading to all manner of havoc in the movie. The second one, but it's the themes are tight. You can identify who these people are and what they need. The first movie is about insiders. The second movie, naturally enough, is about outsiders. The third movie, I don't know what it's about. I don't know that the filmmakers knew what it's about. I mean, I frankly think if they were just cashing in on the chaos of the real 2016 election year right down to the tagline for the movie, which was "Keep America Great." But we'll get to that. To get back to the first movie, it's that conversation that Ethan Hawke's daughter has with him and his wife, Lena Headey. It doesn't go on for long, and it leads into the rest of the movie in a way that, even though the rest of the movie is basically just a locked room suspense movie, it feels organic enough that I was always... There was no point in watching the first one where I was not happy to go along on this ride and see what happened.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Panic Room, the David Fincher film.
Yeah.
And it had echoes of Rear Window, the Hitchcock film, where the character's basically trapped.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do. Like, this is your world. And you have invaders. The lead IMDb has him credited as the polite stranger.
Polite leader, Rhys Wakefield. Yeah.
Yeah, polite leader, Risk Wakefield. He's a real creepy dude. Like this guy has like college rapist like tattooed all over him. Not literally, but you look at him like yeah, college rapist all the way.
He's fantastic. He's got that sickly grin that just goes on and on all night long.
There's no empathy in him at all.
There's nothing. He's perfectly soulless and perfectly polished in a Patrick Bateman kind of way. That guy's performance is one of the things that really makes the movie gel to me. Not that Lena Headey and Ethan Hawke don't pull their weight. They do, but without that guy in that role, which is
it's not as strong of a film.
No, it's a supporting role, but he's a really strong villain. Which leads me to the second major point that we've got here, which is the first movie has a really strong villain in him. The second movie, although the main antagonist that Frank Grillo is dealing with doesn't have as much screen time, but he gets at least one decent to good speech at the end, and he's a strong enough of a presence that it makes the journey that Frank Grillo is going on for that movie across the city and dealing with the civilians that he's got to take care of makes sense. It leaves it in your lap. The third one, all the villains are disposable. They come up, they're like playing cards. They're up and gone. I mean, the one group of them, the Eurotrash tourists, are literally there and gone in one scene. The psychotic teenage girl who's tormenting Michael T. Williamson has a couple scenes.
Okay, we know you don't like the third movie. Stop.
I don't.
We're still on the first one, dude.
Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit.
So let's ultimately let's give a rating to the first film just to see where we stand with it in terms of like where the series as a whole is going. What would you give this movie? Thinking back on it,
because the concept in the first movie is so fresh and that really comes through, and that just makes me want to. I want to give it. I want to give it a really good score. In the end I'm gonna give it about a 7.5 because it's still a genre movie. But it's like the cream of the crop of genre movies. It's just so fresh, and you really do care and even empathize for, by the end, for both Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey. So that's
Yeah, I'd go with slightly higher. I'd give it an 8. Again, the premise is amazing. That the end of the film, not spoiling much, but there's a dinner sequence where the dramatic tension is so thick.
Yeah, you could actually cut it with a knife. It's quite amazing.
And it's so beautifully acted.
Mm-hmm. For a minute, it feels like you're watching a completely different movie.
Yeah, and it's one of those cinematic moments where you're just expecting something to occur, and you get a little hint of what you think you want to see, but what actually ends up happening is just so much more satisfying.
Yeah, and it's not what you think is coming.
Yeah.
But when it comes, it's the only thing that makes sense in human terms. For Lena Headey to do in that moment at the end without spoiling anything.
Yeah, because her character she's the innocent of the group. She's there. She doesn't really enjoy the purge. She doesn't like the fact that they're making money off their neighbors to make themselves richer. It's a bit of a spoiler, but who cares? But the movie just has her there as basically the moral compass of the events that are happening. It's very easy to just put the moral compass on the kids because kids automatically are innocent in films, but to see the world through her eyes, and especially getting that ending just with her in it as the protagonist of the film from that moment on, kind of leaves it on this plane where this is a scary, scary universe, and being good will not mean you will survive.
It's a really quite chilling and ambiguous note where they leave you at the end. You with Lena Headey's character in relation to the people around her who have to go through the next year looking across their finely manicured fences and shrubs at each other, knowing everything that went down in that house on that night.
So Purge 1, incredibly good. We both enjoyed it. Now let's get to the second movie, Purge Anarchy.
Anarchy, yeah, 2014.
And here the main character is played by Frank Grillo. You probably know him best from playing the villain in Captain America, not Civil War. What was the second one?
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, thank you. He kind of takes the reins on the franchise from this point on. The second Purge movie is an amazing dark hero's journey.
Mm-hmm. To me, it has this very John Carpenter vibe to it.
Right, yeah, very Escape from New York. Not Escape from LA because that movie was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, he basically goes out to get all his frustration. He wants to take advantage of this opportunity to purge, and his better nature takes over, and that is just really really cool because in a normal film you'd have that person. Well, I'm going to go out there and protect people. Here you have someone that blatantly just wants to go out and kill, 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 and he doesn't. Again, his better nature just overwhelms whatever evil he might be trying to battle through.
Well, you get to watch his struggle in that first scene where he saves the woman and her daughter from getting herded into a van and being carted off for some rich people's purge to be slaughtered, and you get a couple minutes of him in the car, grappling with himself about whether or not he's going to go out there and do the right thing and save these obviously innocent folks. And of course he does, but it takes him a while to get there. And Frank Grillo has a really quiet way about him, a really quiet charisma that makes that moment make sense for him, both in just in terms of not just in terms of why he's doing it, but what it means. And this is someone who you don't know anything about him, about his character at all until the end, and then you only know a little bit. You don't learn very much about this guy at all.
Which I think is the strength of that character in particular, is the fact that you don't know anything. Because the reason I enjoyed Anarchy almost as much as the first one was because you're just thrown in here. You know the premise, but in terms of who is who and what their motivations are, you don't know anything until you actually just start watching the film, and then gradually these things get revealed.
Yeah, they just kind of wash over you as you go, as it would if you were actually in that kind of situation, in this bizarre purge night, if it was actually unfolding, and you were trying to survive, you would get to know the people around you on the run. There's not time to sit down and have tea and say, so tell me about your favorite movies. What are your hobbies, that kind of thing. It just makes, it's very satisfying, just aesthetically. It makes sense in terms of genre, but it just, in terms of I want to say the world they're creating, but the world they're creating is not, it's too much to use that term. This is not a world that actually makes sense if you step back and look at it. You don't know what year you're in. You don't know how much time has passed since the first movie. In the third movie, you don't know how much time has passed. You've got no idea. It's kind of irrelevant. But in this moment, as each purge night progresses, and especially in the second one, where they introduce the very simple but nice conceit of they give you a clock that's ticking down outside on a billboard. There are 7 hours left in this year's purge. There's 5 hours, 3 hours. You know how much longer they have to go to get to the finish line, which just adds up amps up the tension in a really incremental way.
And in terms of the action set pieces, they're actually a lot more elaborate because, there's a lot more space in the street than there is in a home. I mean, duh.
Right. That's why they made the second one, is they wanted to explore the world.
And it opens up the world a lot more, not just in terms of from a class point of view, because you get to see how the purge affects poor people in this film, which is something you didn't get in the first movie at all. So I always, in my mind's eye, see these movies happening at the same time. You said there was something online about how this one takes place a couple years later.
Supposedly, the chronology of is that this one takes place at least a few years after.
Yeah, but that's not where it's in my head. In my head, they take place at the same time.
Which they can. You can read it that way. It's fine.
But as just a straight up action film, the Purge is almost like that Punisher movie that we never got that we always wanted.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or that sequel to Escape from New York that we never got and always wanted. It's a very tight, well constructed, well shot piece of entertainment. Mm-hmm. Not as cerebral as the first film, but I'd say just as entertaining. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just as satisfying. I don't know if entertaining is really the right
satisfying
word, because it's you kind of have to put a genre label before you can call it entertainment, at least in my mind. And I enjoyed the first two movies, but was I entertained by the particular kind of horror / suspense / kind of creepy sci-fi vibe that goes on in the first one, and the kind of Escape from New York vibe that's going on in the second one? I don't know. I because I don't know what lens to look at it through to see that kind of label. Whatever, it doesn't matter. They're both good movies, and they're both building on genre ideas that are just kind of thrown at the wall, and there's enough. You have this very basic idea of once a night, anyone is allowed to murder anyone else for 12 hours, and no one will, the cops won't step in. It's all, everything's legal.
And I think as a franchise, the fact that they made it so different makes you want to see where else this franchise can go.
Yeah.
I think well, let's give the second one a grade before we go into the third, because I know you have things to say about the third. Okay, so this I'd say Purge Anarchy, the second film, I'd give that one a 7.
Mm-hmm.
And where would you slant on it?
I would give it the same rating I gave the first one. I'd give it a 7.5. I enjoyed them both equally in different ways. They're very different movies. Aside from the fact that they take place in the same universe, they really have nothing in common. And I respect that. That the filmmaker, it's the same guy who made all 3 movies, that he was willing to go to such polar opposites from the first one to the second one. It's a simple switch inside to outside, but it worked really well.
Yeah, I think the movies come out within a year of each other, so
yep.
You get the sense that this guy had ideas roaming around for maybe this was supposed to be the first film, and then in order to get that going, he did the enclosed Purge experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked it, but. I know you got things to say about Purge election year.
What's your rating for the second one?
Oh, my rating for the second one was a 7.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay.
He's not listening.
Moving on.
Because he wants to get to the third one.
Purge election year. No, I didn't like it. No, I didn't think there was anything in particular redeeming about it. Frank Grillo comes back. He's playing the same guy.
But now he has a name.
Even matters. He doesn't have a name in the second one. In the third one, he has a name. I don't remember what it is. You have it there.
Leo Barnes.
He's Leo Barnes. Fine. He's the head of security for the senator who wants to bring the purge to an end.
Hillary Clinton.
She's Hillary Clinton. I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to go there. This senator is a good person.
Whoa! I'm not subtle there, brother.
I didn't say it was subtle. I'm not going to go to real life politics here.
All right.
We're talking about the Purge, which is a fictional universe. In the Purge, this senator's family was wiped out on Purge Night 18 years before. She had to watch it all happen. She's been traumatized by this, etc. She's made it her life's mission to end the Purge. You have a little bit of
class warfare.
Well, class warfare. You bring, because you've had this concept of the new founding fathers built up in a really nicely sinister way through the first 2 movies. You know that you know who they are. You know that this is what they do. This is how they recovered America, is they instituted this idea of the Purge, but you haven't met them yet. They're just in the background. They're just shadows. And to bring them into the light, there's all sorts of interesting things you could do with them. You could make them aliens. You could make them cannibals. You could do whatever you want. So I just feel like to do the easy, simple, and frankly cliche choice of making them all rich, old, white men who hate each other and hate poor people and hate... It's just the most bargain basement choice you could possibly make. There's nothing, and there's nowhere to go with it, aside from once we know that they're rich, old, white men, hateful white men, then they can become rich, old, hateful, leering and screeching and raving white men. It's not that much of a difference. There's no character arc to go through. I guess some people have talked about this idea that somehow Ted Cruz is supposed to be represented or Donald Trump is supposed to be represented. I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. They're all frankly interchangeable. We meet the first new founding father, I guess, who is the oldest rich white man, and then later near the end of the film, there's the other rich white man who's younger, but he's a lech. And there is no character arc to these people. There's nothing to know about why they're doing what they're doing, aside from that they want to do it in order to screw over the world, make profits, blah blah blah. It's just not interesting. I don't know if anyone could look at it. Maybe someone in the political world could look at that movie and get more out of it than I did. Possibly. Well, I'm not going to say that it's impossible.
This is where the third movie just felt weaker to me than the first 2. I didn't get the sense of character from this movie the way I got it from the first one. Even Senator Charlie Roan, played by Elizabeth Mitchell. I mean, her character is a very cliche, heart of gold person that wants to help everybody, blah, 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 blah. And that's okay. Mackenzie Williamson plays Joe Dixon, a shop owner that's getting screwed over by the government, and
his Purge insurance is revoked the night before the Purge, so his shop is going to be exposed. He has to stake the night out and watch to make sure that no one rips him off, leading to a confrontation.
So there's a lot of the 1% sticking it to the other 99% in this movie going on, and that lost me because it doesn't make it as fun when you introduce something like that to a series like this. You make it, I think, a little bit too real worldy.
When you have this concept that this very visceral and yet on a primal level understandable concept that once a year murder is legal for 12 hours, when you start bringing real world actual politics that we live with day in and day out in a world where
it's just not as much fun.
Legal, it's just not as much fun. It's harder to enjoy. I felt like watching Election Year, I felt like the movie wanted it to be a popcorn movie. It wants to, throw its bling in my face. There's lots of big gaudy scenes. There's neon going on when the psycho girl comes back to the shop with her friends. They're all wearing masks. They've got AK-47s and whatever. We've got slow-mo shots of them getting out of the car and waving their guns around, and it's just so much. It's just so much glitter with nothing behind it.
It's so much cinematic eye candy, but it's a lot of cinematic eye candy, but the sense of character of knowing who these people are without them just being your cliche villains or cliche good guys, it just makes it feel so. To me, it felt like one of those 80s video games with like a street brawl where you go from point A to point B and you start beating people up to get to the end.
Yeah. I can totally see the Purge Election Year game on Xbox and how you would waste a night playing it.
Yeah, but in terms of the action's still very well put together. It's shot very well. It's exciting to see when the action happens on screen. It is incredibly cool.
Fine.
It's
There's nothing
gritty.
Wrong with it. There's a one-on-one fight that Frank Grillo has with one of the bad guys near the end that's quite nice.
And there's a evil Sheldon shootout at the end that I thought was just funny as all heck. Mm-hmm. But it is the weakest of the franchise. But I think it's. And I'm looking at the box office for it because he mentioned it didn't make any money and he was wrong. Okay. It's actually the most successful of all the Purge movies. It's made about $80 million. But this movie felt like it was the most. It tried the hardest to be the most crowd pleasing one, and as a movie, I think it failed being a stronger film. But in terms of the crowd pleasing moments where you get your violence and get your gore and get your ridiculous action set pieces, it probably fulfilled that for a lot of folks. For me, I like the intimacy and the quiet moments of the first two films a lot more than I liked the bombastic nature of the third. But I can't say I didn't like the movie. You can say you didn't like the movie. I can
say I didn't like the movie, and in fact, I believe I have. I didn't like the movie. I don't know what is. I frankly don't know what there is to like about the movie. So you've got a couple things that could develop. You've got the story of the senator who is trying to bring the Purge to an end. We get a bit of her backstory, and then nothing more. She's essentially treated as disposable as everyone else, as the villains who are there for one scene or two scenes.
Right.
In the first one, we have a great dynamic both between the good guys, who essentially are in the first one in the house, and the second one is Frank Grillo and this band of civilians he's leading across across the city. And the bad guys are randos is a word for it. You've got this rando preppy who is the leader of rando other preppies in the first one. We don't know who he is. We don't know where he came from, and we don't care.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We don't have to know anything about him to understand that in some way that we don't want to inspect too closely, unless we're that twisted ourselves. This guy is some kind of representation of pure evil. It just makes sense. You can see it there. You can feel it when he gives his speech halfway through the film about you have to give our prey up to us. It's our right to purge. It's our right to do this. In the second one, you've got the colonel, or whoever it is, that's Frank Grillo's opposite.
Yeah,
in some ways.
Kind of his evil doppelganger.
Yeah, he's a character from Frank Grillo's past. But these are also just people. In the third one, the bad guy is supposed to be the system itself. It's supposed to be the new founding fathers, and to do that in a way that doesn't throw it in your face and that doesn't
come off as pretentious
or preachy. you would have to put some real thought into, okay, so who are the new founding fathers? How long have they been doing this? Why? What's the dynamic between them? And because there's 15 of these rich old white guys, we would have to get to know all of them on some level for the film to make sense in a character way. And of course, we're not going to.
Right,
They're
and
all
on that, just to
disposable.
piggyback off that idea a little bit, that's where I think the third film could have done more in terms of. The Walking Dead has these web episodes where you get to know these peripheral characters that never interact with the main story. You could have done that with this series if you're going to introduce you're going to bring in the new founding fathers, or the crazy girl that offs her family, or the travelers that actually visit the United States to take advantage of Purge Night. There was this. They could have been only them could have been the villains of this film, and that would have been better for it.
Yeah, you've essentially got three different groups of villains. You've got the psychotic girl and her friends. You've got the Euro tourists, and you've got the rich old white men. You've got three villains when
One would have been
when
fine.
two would have been too many. One of those people, or groups of people, as the villain of the film, is all you need to have the same nicely nicely tension filled dynamic that you have in the first two movies. But they were cashing in, and they did, to the tune of $80 million, which is frankly big deal. They made something like $8 million more than the second one. It's all negligible. The movie made its money back. It recouped, which will
Mean there'll be more Purge
there will be a
movies.
fourth one, since they technically
Leave you on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, they left you with the Purge having supposedly ended at the end of the third movie. But that's easy enough to say, well, we could go into the territory of people want the Purge back, so they're going out and murdering on Purge night anyway. Maybe some of the cops are in support of them, so they're not stopping it. Something like that. There's plenty of places this idea could go. You can milk this idea of the Purge for another 4 or 5 or 6 movies.
It could be like this generation's Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
where bring a new director, a new writer, just grab that idea by the horns and do something else with it. I kind of really don't care to see Frank Grillo's character in any of the films. I don't. Getting rid of the Purge by the end of the movie, getting rid of the Purge at the end of the film, to me was a bit of a letdown, because, well, now you just made your basic post-apocalyptic, Mad Max-ish universe where everyone's just going to go buck wild killing each other. Mm-hmm. Instead of confining it to that 12-hour window where there's tension, there's drama, there's more of an opportunity to do a deeper character dynamic. Now it's just, kill fest, 20 whatever. Mm-hmm. So, before we go on to where we see the series going, what would you rate the third Purge movie as?
If I was going to be generous, I would give it a 5. I'm not going to be generous. I'll give it a 3.5. I frankly don't think it's worth anything more than that. I mean, I frankly think, you said it yourself before we started casting, it feels like someone threw the script together in 3 weeks. This sees the craziness that's going on in the real world. Hey, this makes sense. Let's capitalize. And so they did.
Ironically enough, I would score it as a 5. A shiny 5, because I liked it just enough to say, you know what, 5's not a bad grade, you can take it or leave it, but I was entertained enough. Now, it's funny, because we talked about how quickly the script was put together. There's, I won't look it up, but there's this thought in the back of my head that maybe the moment Donald Trump went down that escalator, this guy was on the phone saying, okay, we got to make a Purge election year movie.
Yeah.
Because, think about it, I mean, it was like June of 2015 that he announced his presidency, mm-hmm. and then between then and now, it's not too hard to make one of these, bone and sinew, gritty action movies.
If they started pre-production right then, the day Trump announced, they would definitely have gotten it out when they got it out, which was what, June, right?
Yeah, July 1st.
Yeah, that makes sense. The time frame sounds about right.
But let's put aside this series where it is and just think of what excites me about the Purge and the idea of the Purge is what else you can do with it. There's this idea in the back of my head where you can do like a rite of passage film based on Purge Night, where in order for a son to prove to his father he's now a man, he has to
go out on Purge Night and take his first blood. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's basically taking your kid out hunting for deer or something like that. Only that's human meat this time around. Or you can you can do the film from the perspective of someone that's actually purging, but really purging, not find any type of redemption story there.
Yeah, so just a total chaos blitzkrieg kind of. What would be a good cinematic analogy to that? That's a hard one. I mean, I think you would have to go back to the days of Apocalypse Now and
Yeah, all those 70s very uber depressing films.
The Deer Hunter in places where they really go into the heart of darkness, kind of. And you could have that. You could have we're going to show you something with no redeeming value. Many people wouldn't get it, but that would be just fine if the film was well made. You could absolutely do that story of the protagonist is an anti-hero who it's almost impossible for us to identify with because he's he's someone we would normally dismiss as some psycho, some nutjob we don't care about. But if we're forced to, kind of like the way we're forced to identify with Anthony Perkins in Psycho after Janet Leigh is killed, you have to because there's no one else around. You find yourself starting to identify with that person. That's definitely a way that
whether you like it or not, this is your lead.
Yep.
And that was the idea of maybe like an aftermath, like what happens once, let's say for argument's sake, like some dude's kicking down someone's door and they got a chainsaw, and right when they're about to slice someone's head off, they hear the bells and like, oh crap, Purge night is over. All right, see you at work, Tim.
Yeah, I've always wondered, how are the police supposed to know if you kill somebody at 7:01 a.m. the next morning? Can they come in and track the time of death to the exact minute? Hard to say.
Yeah.
Because if you kill someone at 6:59, you're golden. If you kill someone at 7:01, it's illegal. But how do they know?
Yeah, but like that, I just find the peripheral stories. I think it'd just be a lot of fun. I mean, imagine a boss is a complete jerk. Purge night, like his house is basically a fort. Yeah, but that wouldn't work because in the third movie they kind of show you that rich people don't actually get involved with the purge. Yeah, they do that there. Yeah,
rich people purge.
Rich people purge. Oh no, rich people do purge.
Rich people have their purge victims brought to them. They essentially buy poor people as sacrifices, is what the second movie tells us, and that's kind of a little bit expanded on in the third one.
Yeah, my mistake. You're right. But yeah, like the boss that's been a jerk all year that has to fortify his house 10 times over because he's a purger. The kid coming home from school late one night that has to get home before purge night begins. All these little stories that you can have are interesting. I mean, I don't think they have the strength to be a feature film, but they can make amazing 10 to 15 minute shorts.
Yeah, you could do something like they did with The Matrix back in the day, where they made the Animatrix.
Yeah, the Animatrix was awesome.
It was amazing little animated shorts that were kind of one-offs told in the universe of The Matrix. They didn't connect up to the main story. You could totally do something like that.
Yeah, and even and what was what's remarkable about the Animatrix films is that in many ways they were better than the next two Matrix movies. That's the strength of introducing new blood into any franchise, is that you get more ideas. And I think for the Purge to continue, you need more ideas. You just can't rely on Purge night. Someone has to do the right thing. Says who?
Yeah.
Why not just why not someone maybe do the second film with Grillo or a character like him going out there and instead of acknowledging his moral fiber, he just says, what, to hell with it. Let's just kill people for 2 hours. So I think that pretty much puts the Purge series in a nutshell. So I enjoy them. I want more of them. Do you want more of them?
As long as they're better than Election Year.
Yeah, dude.
It might be a matter of getting a new director in. The first 3 have been made. They're all made by the same guy. If you look him up on IMDb, he seems to have done nothing else of consequence aside from one movie with Ethan Hawke a few years before the first one. The Purge, obviously, is his baby. Maybe he doesn't want to hand it over to anyone.
He wrote The Negotiator.
That movie with Samuel L. Jackson and Kevin Spacey, which was a perfectly decent movie back in the day. I remember...
James
DeMonico.
DeMonico, thank you.
Okay.
He's from Brooklyn.
Local respect. So he's done this and a couple shorts. Maybe the solution would be turning the franchise over to somebody else. Maybe it's just time.
Yeah, I think it's a great film to give an up-and-coming director a chance to just do something with it. So I think the Purge series is very entertaining, very cool. I think there's more that can be done with it. It has not been exhausted. So we'll see where it goes from here. Yeah.
It's an idea that makes a lot of sense. All you have to do is flick on your Facebook any day of the week and see all the outrage that's going on out there. I've cut my own Facebook usage back to almost nothing because you don't want to see it after a while. There's no reason to get invested in it. So it's the outrage of last week is almost interchangeable with the outrage of this week, next week, and so on. Everyone's got that rage going on inside them all the time, and the Purge makes total sense. It's the perfect fantasy release that isn't really a fantasy. You know that on some level this could be real and people would do it and everyone would go along with it because people have that just primal bloodlust in them that has no escape valve. So yeah, the Purge could easily run for another 5 or 6 movies.
Yeah, as long as Friday the 13th has been running, as long as a TV series of Walking Dead has been running, or anything else that, as long as you introduce, new ideas, fresh blood, a different perspective, it can go on for as long as it can possibly, as long as it makes money, there will be more. All right, so on that, let's put a moratorium on Purge. What should our next movie be, my friend?
Well, we've got the Blair Witch remake coming up. It's opening on September 16th, so we're definitely going to do that one because the early reviews of it are very interesting, and many of them are exceptionally positive, so I definitely want to check that one out.
Yeah, and as it stands right now, there's really nothing in cinemas that's really worth a damn. I don't want to see The Mechanic.
No.
Hands of Stone, I think, I'm 3 boxing movies in 1 year between, no.
It's
I'm
enough,
done. Yeah. What is this? Don't Breathe. Not a big horror guy. Maybe Sully.
Possibly.
Sully comes out before Blair Witch, so that might be one to really.
I know nothing about it aside from that Tom Hanks looks distinguished on the poster. I haven't even watched the preview yet.
Yeah, so I think maybe our next film will be Sully. It's Clint Eastwood, who's 11D. Sheesh, dude's 85.
He directed it?
Yeah,
okay.
And it's supposedly shot entirely in IMAX, so it should be visually interesting to see.
Okay, there you go. Sully coming up next, followed by the new Blair Witch.
All right, well, thanks for listening to us. My name's Eric Ortiz, Full American New York City. Send us an email, 365reelspodcast@gmail.com. That's 365podcast@gmail.com. Be nice, be mean.
Be yourselves.
We prefer nice. But, yeah, thanks a lot for listening to us. My whole cohort is
Everett Goldner.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Weapons of Class 4 and lower have been authorized for use during the purge. All other weapons are restricted. Government officials of ranking